moderator, Madam Jaria. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And yeah, actually, I would like to recap a little bit on what I have presented last week. Okay, I have actually covered how to handle trauma, crisis, and grief, and I've also covered suicide inquiry. So these are the things that I think is very, very important to address because there's a lot of mental health issues that is going on nowadays, especially among our adolescents and children. Okay, because we know that they are going to be the future leaders, inshallah. So I think that's a very important topic to talk about. So I have actually covered the SAFE approach, okay, which means the abbreviation means seek to understand what is going on in their lives or the people that are struggling, okay, and then A for ask, yeah, ask specific questions, ask with empathy. That's why we have that suicide inquiry. It is to actually ask specific, relevant, good questions so that we can have an information on what exactly that they are going through. And when I say ask with empathy, it means we need to be able to empathize when we ask questions. Okay, and there are specific guidelines on actually how to ask those questions, which I have covered last class or last session. And then V is to validate. Okay, validate and provide hope. So it's basically very important to validate whatever that they have going through. And Dr. Pamelia have covered that very thoroughly in her lecture on how are we able to actually validate people's emotions and feelings and also provide hope. And then E is encourage people to seek professional help. So that is just a summary of what I have covered, yeah, in previous session. And this section or this session actually is actually a continuation from that. Okay, since we know that we have the ability to be the helper or to be the person that help other people. So now how do we help ourselves? Because we as a helper is also susceptible to becoming to be having some issues or nauzubillah, right, to have a mental illness. So in order to prevent that from happening, we should be able to know how to practice self-care. So that is how I would like to start my session for today. But before I move on or move forward, I want to highlight this particular quote that you see on the screen. So we don't get over, right, or move on from our trauma. We are forced to make space for it. We carry it. We learn to live with it, and sometimes, okay, we thrive in spite of it. So I think that's a beautiful message, okay, to again to understand and also to feel that we are actually very vulnerable individuals, and we need guidance from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and also other people to help us go through whatever struggles that we are going through. Okay. I would also like to show you a specific video, okay, which highlights how important it is to have, this space to actually to talk to people, even though it is a small talk. So let me just share the video. Okay, so just a very short video, and when you talk about smallpox, right? So it's basically, again, you would not know the significant effect of actually talking to someone, a stranger who is actually struggling at that moment. And this actually happened to one of my students. So one of my students actually called me and say, I have had this experience of actually saving somebody's life, because she had that instinct to go and help, this person was about to, trigger warning, to jump from the railways. Okay, so it's very, very important to, again, believe that we have that ability or capacity to actually help other people. So moving on to what I'm going to talk about today, coming back to the slides. So again, we, as I mentioned earlier on, we are very much susceptible as well, or to be affected, by other people's suffering. Okay, because we are human beings that can feel other people's emotion, right? So that's why it's very important to know if you are actually going through something that is called compassion fatigue, and how to overcome it by practicing self-care. All right. So let's see. Okay, before I start, can I ask all of you to tell me what are the steps that you take or that you do to nurture your mind, heart, body, and soul? Can I see some answers in the chat box? Can you type in? I just want to see if that's okay. So what do you do to nurture your mind, heart, body, and also soul? Gratitude. That's good. Anyone else? See the nature. Thank you for your answers. Self-talk, exercise, spiritual, salah. Okay, read, exercise, pray, climb, journaling. It's good. Read books, chat with my mom, conversation with close friends, colleagues, taking care of my trees. That's good. Relax. Askar, sometimes salat. Okay, salah. All right. Praying to Allah. Take a moment to analyze situation, every situation. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, for your responses and your answers. So that's basically what we are going to cover today. Okay, I know every single person will have your own way in terms of practicing self-care. Okay, just to give you a little bit of information on what we'd like to share today. So let's talk about, let's define first what is what is self, what is compassion fatigue before we move on to self-care. Okay, so compassion fatigue is the cost. It is the cost of caring for other people. It's basically the price that we pay for helping other people. So when we experience compassion fatigue, so fatigue is again tiredness, right? So when we experience compassion fatigue, it is actually a deep physical and emotional exhaustion. So it's not only our body is tired, but also our mind, our soul can be tired as well, and our emotions and feelings, our thinking, all that actually would affect us. And once our mind, body, soul, all of this are affected, it will, you can see it. That's why it says there is a pronounced change in one's ability to feel empathy for their loved ones or other people that they love. Okay, so it's very important to highlight or to actually feel the changes that we are going through when we are catering or we're busy catering for other people. Okay, so once you have lost that ability to empathize with other people, that would actually lead to the loss of enjoyment of helping other people. It's not only constricted to professional, helpers or clinical psychologists or counselors, but anyone who's spending, who spends their time actually catering to listen to other people or to help other people. So it's very much significant for in the field of where you deal with people all the time. Okay, so you lose that enjoyment, and sometimes it can lead to secondary traumatic stress. So secondary traumatic stress is actually we ourselves absorb. Yeah, we are the second hand. It's a second hand shock basically. So it's basically we are absorbing the shock from other people that we are witnessing or helping. And then that could lead to possible stress related illnesses. So we ourselves become sick. Yeah, not only physically but also emotionally. All right. So that is compassion fatigue. So what are the causes of compassion fatigue? So number one, if we're constantly dealing with other people who have gone through trauma or victims of abuse, we actually absorb those emotions, those feelings, because again, we are social beings, and therefore we actually can feel and relate to those feelings. Okay, so if we constantly attend to people who have gone through significant pain and suffering, you might also be affected. Okay, and then number two, inadequate training in dealing with traumatic issues. So basically, when we deal with people who are going through a crisis or trauma or grief, we ourselves need to equip ourselves with training, with knowledge, so that we are able to separate them and us. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about boundaries later on. So it's basically focusing on, you need to be able to have a simple, it might not be elaborate, but a simple training or a short training in terms of how to handle your own emotions and also how to help other people. All right, so that's number two. Number three, we have our own unresolved issues or unresolved trauma, which can contribute in terms of us feeling tired. Okay, so if we don't address that, that could also definitely affect other people that we are talking to or that we are attending to, and that will ultimately affect us. So we call this in counseling, we call this counter transference. So it's basically we are transferring our own thoughts and feelings and unresolved issues to the other person, and that will be, that won't be good. Yeah, if we transfer those to the person that we are actually supposed to help. Okay, so it's very important to be aware, and accept the fact that we have unresolved trauma, and find out, what it is. And then the last one, minimize. Of course, there are other causes as well, but I'm only highlighting this for now. Okay, so minimal or non-existent self-care habits here means you don't have a specific self-care list, or you don't practice much, or that's why it says minimal. So it's like, as you can see in the picture, that you wouldn't let this happen to your phone, so don't let it happen to you either. It means you need to always recharge. Okay, recharge, so that you can actually help other people. So before we even help other people, definitely we have to help ourselves first. Okay, so those are the causes, and now moving on to the effects. Now, there are different aspects here in psychology and also in medical profession. We have that bio-psycho social model, right? And I have incorporated spiritual as well here. So what are the effects? As you can see there, emotionally, remember when I said that there's a price that we have to pay when we help other people? So, and we lose that enjoyment, and you feel inside you that you when you are constantly attending to other people, you always say no to yourself and say yes to other people, which is not good, because that could lead to anger, that could lead to irritability and a sense of hopelessness, because you are not able, if you are taking away, what I mean by hopelessness here, you feel helpless as well and also hopeless, because if you are not able to recognize that other people's problem is not your problem, or you have the difficulty into separating that, and then that might lead to hopelessness and also helplessness. And physically, as I mentioned before, stress related illnesses, right? So you might be, it can manifest this emotional burden or stress that you are taking in, right? Would manifest or could translate to physical, physical symptoms. So, such as headaches, abdominal pain, hypertension. Different people would experience it differently. And cognitively, as you can see there, right? Difficulty concentrating, you constantly blame yourself. Remember, it relates to hopelessness and helplessness. So if you constantly blame yourself for not being able to help other people, then that would lead to hopelessness and helplessness. And low self-esteem, again, it relates back to the guilt and the blame that you put on yourself if you are not able to help other people. Okay. And then behaviorally, sometimes, again, not everyone is actually could go through all this, right, or would have the same effect. Different people are built differently. So some people might experience behavioral only or cognitively, spiritually, but actually everything is very much connected to each other. So behaviorally, sometimes people who cannot cope or have somewhat not really helpful coping, so they might engage to substance abuse or misuse, chronic lateness, lack of joy. So when I talk about chronic lateness here, means you don't enjoy. Remember, loss of enjoyment. So you don't enjoy anymore what you like to do. Okay, so for example, I am a clinical psychologist. All right, so I enjoy meeting my clients because I have that passion to actually to help them. So we sometimes it comes unconsciously or it happens unconsciously. So we then I would notice that, okay, why am I dragging myself from bed to go to work, example. So I would be late going to work because I feel like, I've lost that enjoyment to help people, and definitely lack of joy. So I no longer feel happy to do my job. Okay. And then lastly, of course, spiritually. So some people, they would lose hope. They would lose the meaning of why they are here. What's the purpose? Okay. And why is this happening to them? It's the constant question of why, and why. Okay. Why I can't help other people? Why am I feeling like this? So all these questions would come up, and we start to question. Okay. So these are examples of the effects of compassion fatigue. So now, yeah, how do we manage, right? How do we manage compassion fatigue? This is very simple, right? Way, yeah, but I will go into deeper sense later on when we talk about what are the practices, or what are the things that we can do in order to practice self-care or to do self-care. Okay, but this is just a very simple way of managing compassion fatigue. So number one, of course, awareness. Know your own trauma map. Remember when I said that we have our own unresolved issues or problems, okay, that we might not know of at that moment. So knowing what affects us, knowing our struggles, acknowledging it, because actually when we talk to people, sometimes we impose, sometimes, I'm emphasizing on the word sometimes we impose our own values, our unresolved feelings to other people, and that could affect how we empathize or how we practice empathy. So we need to be aware of our own trauma and how can it affect you, right, or us, in terms of caring for other people. So create a simple self-care list, as you mentioned in the chat box just now, to help you to de-stress. So that's A. The B, balance. I can remember when I said boundaries, right? Your other people's problems is actually their problem, not ours. So what do I mean by that? It's not that we just abandon them and don't do anything. What I mean by their problem is we are there. We're just there to actually guide them and be present, you know, um, help them in a way that they wanted to be helped. Okay, so maintaining the clear boundaries here means, again, you are allowed to say no. If you cannot do it, you are allowed to say no and actually find another person that can help. Okay, so avoid overdoing, yeah, overdoing it or constantly attending to others. Recognize your own negative coping skills or coping skills that are very much unhelpful. Okay, and try to find other alternatives. And lastly, C, connection. So avoid isolation. So avoid being alone, because if you listen to people and the things that you're listening to are very heavy, right, you need to have some debriefing. Debriefing here means after you talk to someone, you need to process it. Process it with someone that you trust. Remember that you trust. Okay? Process it with someone that you trust so that you're able, this person is able to actually, again, empathize to what you're going through, inshallah, right? Okay. And a friend, a very close friend that you can talk to, I mean, it's much, much better if you can actually talk to a professional as well. If you think your mental health is no longer in, it's no longer good, or you're feeling unwell emotionally and physically. So talk to and connect with other people, develop your own support system, and seek training. Remember when I said that you might experience compassion fatigue because, all right, because of lack of training. Okay, all right. Okay, moving on. Okay, so what is self-care? So self-care, it says here, is paying sufficient attention, all right, to one's own bodily and psychological well-being. So you're not only paying attention, but of course, yeah, as Muslims, spiritually is definitely inside there. So it also means knowing who you are and know your limits, as I mentioned about boundaries, right? And self-care can also take form of self-purification. All right. So it says there in the Quran, making time for yourself, yeah, on a routine basis to spend, yeah, to meditate or reflect, yeah, can bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it says there ultimately our bodies have rights over us and our health is a trust and an amana from our creator. So we are responsible. It is our job to take care of ourselves. Okay, and self-care allows you to refuel or feel recharged, essentially, yeah, to refill. I'm sure you've heard of this saying before you can, fill, right, other people's cup, you need to refill your own first. Or before you can pour, yeah, to other people's cup, you need to pour enough, right, water in your mug or in your cup. All right, so that is self-care. So this is what I want to focus more specifically in today's topic. This is actually by Jamal Parikh. All right, it's a book. It's called A Handbook of Spiritual Medicine. So he has outlined, or he has came up with this cycle. It's called a continual cycle of self-purification. So I'm going to break down all these 7 cycle, yeah, into. I have also incorporated some of the important highlights or information or points that Professor Abdullah Rahman has mentioned in his podcast. So I have included all those into an acronym as well. Okay, so let me just click. All right. So as you can see there at the bottom, so I have adapted it from, I have combined actually from this podcast, Spiritual Healing and Transformation in Islamic Tradition with Dr. Abdullah Rahman, all right, and also the Handbook of Spiritual Medicine by Jamal Parikh. Okay, so I have combined that, and then it says here, I have highlighted, okay, combating compassion fatigue and also how to practice self-care. So in each of these, letters, it means something. So P means pause. I'm going to elaborate that in a bit. E means engage. A means assess. C means care. And E means ease. All right. So I will divide all the 7 cycles just now into this. Okay. So let's see P. All right. Step 1. it says there, accept your inner truth. So we pause. Yeah, pause for a moment. So this is what when we start to reflect, right? What is going on in our lives. So the ultimate objective is to seek the divine pleasure or from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and reflect, yeah, on your spiritual emotional state without judgment, because sometimes we're too busy with what going on with we're too busy with work, we're too busy with family, sometimes we forget. Yeah, sometimes we forget. I also remind this is also a reminder to myself to take a moment, pause, and acknowledge that we need to reflect on what is happening with us. So acknowledge the presence of flaws or undesirable traits, and then I've given some practical example there. Different people would have different ways, yeah, in doing self-reflection. So it's up to you. This is just an example. Okay, spend 5 to 10 minutes after prayer to just to have a very short time to reflect. Okay, and that inner truth that I'm talking about here is actually knowing and acknowledging and accepting the fact that we can make mistakes, and we constantly make mistakes, and human beings are made to err or to make errors, right? So we acknowledge that. That is step number one. Pause. Pause for a moment and reflect. Step two is okay. I have combined, yeah, in the cycle just now. I've combined two steps. Yeah, step two and step three, which is making commitment, and step three is find a mentor. So once we have acknowledged, okay, once we have I've done self reflection, or know, okay, these are my limitations. How do I go about it, or what can I do about it? So the first thing is your niyat, right? Your niyat to actually, or niya, to actually change. Okay, but before we even go to change, we need to make a commitment. Commit to what? So make a firm intention to engage and stay committed to the path of spiritual purification. So again, once we are aware, and once we know our limitations, our drawbacks, we it's how to say, it's coming back to again to fitrah, which means again we are driven to do goodness, right? So one of the ways is actually to make a commitment to actually change. So that could actually deepen your connection with Allah, right? So sincere intention to wanting to commit to, so that you are able to change. So again, practical example there. It's up to you on how you want to do it, but you can commit to certain things. So how to say, this is there is also a very short abbreviation. It's called SMART goals. I'm pretty sure you have heard of that as well. SMART goals here means again, uh, S stands for specific, yeah, M measurable, right? A is attainable, R is relatable, and T is time specific. So if you can do that, if you can, if you are able to actually have that particular goal, that SMART goals, that can definitely help, yeah, in dividing your time or time management. Okay, in order to commit to what you want to commit to. And then step three is definitely find someone, find a mentor, find someone who can guide you. Each and every one of us might have a friend that will constantly, help us to again, when we tend to, like fall down, not necessarily physically, but like when your mental health is not so well. So find a reliable person, find someone that you can trust, right, to actually to talk to. Okay, so attend, it says that attend halakas, or find someone that can actually give you some practical advices, for example, okay, to help you to go through what you're currently struggling with. Okay, that is step three. And step four, make time. Okay, make time here means, remember when we say about commitment just now, in order, before we even start to commit to do something, we have to make time. Make time to what? To reassess your schedule, to prioritize spiritual growth. Again, as I've mentioned this before, we tend to be very, very busy, right? We have a very busy life, but we have to make time, prioritize our, what is our priority, or what are our priorities. Okay, so we, being able to make time to block time for prayer and dhikr daily, that would help as well. Or do something that you can engage in, and like I said, um, it has, you need to sacrifice. All right, you need to sacrifice certain things in order to be able to make room. You have to make room for what you want to commit to. Okay. And then step 5 is self-reflection. So it relates back again to, accepting. Remember, accepting the inner truth. So when we do self-reflection, we identify the symptoms and the roots of our spiritual ailments, and then we evaluate our actions. Does it align with our purpose? And then, how to say, to look at what are the things that I need to improve on. Okay, but remember, right? Also in self-reflecting, sometimes we have, in psychology we call it NATS, NATS, with a small s, NATS, negative automatic thoughts. So sometimes when we reflect, this unwanted, uninvited negative automatic thought, that's why it's called negative automatic thought. Sometimes it just comes. Okay, so being able to point out, or being able to acknowledge, okay, I am having a negative automatic thoughts. Okay, acknowledging that, and pointing that out, it is actually very helpful when you do self-reflection, because sometimes we tend to blame, ourselves, we tend to be guilty, we tend to punish ourselves so much, we tend to be highly critical on ourselves, that we forget actually that we are built in a way that we are susceptible to making mistakes. Okay, so because saying bad things to yourself is never good. Okay, punishing yourself is never good to your mental health. Okay, and constantly saying that you're no good, for example, it's never going to be beneficial. Okay, so that's why we when we self-reflect, it's very important to be mindful on what we tell ourselves, or what we say to ourselves. All right. Okay, moving on. Number 6, apply spiritual medicine. So apply appropriate measures to address and heal, the spiritual diseases of the heart. So what do I mean by spiritual disease of the heart? Anything that, a character, or something that we feel very heavy in ourselves. Like, I'll give you an example. So that the book, right? The Handbook of Spiritual Medicine, it highlights all these, characteristics or ailments of the heart. For example, takabur, what else? Ghadab, or anger, extravagance, all that are actually spiritual diseases, which we can pretty much relate, to ourselves and our daily life. Okay, so we care, because that is connected, right, to our soul. So care for your soul through worship and good deeds. Okay, and it's again it the examples that I've given here, it's just, a simple, example. You can always, it's up to you on how you want to do it. Okay, so example will be memorizing a short surah weekly, or give a daily charity, and it's the smallest things that you can do to do goodness or kindness, or be kind to other people. Okay, so that would, actually help a lot in, again, not to fully eradicate, but slowly getting closer, yeah, to being a better version of yourself. Okay, now the last one, or the last step, yeah, in the cycle, is continually strive. So that's why it is a cycle. So when we engage in self-purification, it talks about sustaining the spiritual health as well. So it's an ongoing process. We are constantly, evolving, we are constantly growing. So I think this is a very important thing to focus on, right? We do not stop, right? We don't stop in terms of how to say transforming or changing. So strive for excellence and rely on Allah's plan. Okay, do our job. We do our job in terms of what? We do our job in terms of again becoming a better version of ourselves, becoming closer to Allah, and inshallah the rest. Yeah, we believe that Allah has planned for us. Okay, and practical example there I mentioned: set achievable, yeah, spiritual goals and trust Allah. So again, I want to emphasize here, different people would have different ways, yeah, in getting closer to Allah. It is up to you on how you want to do it. But the most important thing is we engage ourselves in this constant cycle of self purification. All right. So as okay, I actually finished quite early today. Okay, so this peace framework integrates self purification with daily self care practices. So, just to recap on what we have talked about. So, pause, right? Reflect on your inner truth, engage, right? Commit to growth and seek guidance, assess, prioritize, and evaluate actions, care, nurture your body, mind, and soul, and ease, right? Strive sincerely while trusting Allah's plan. So together, these steps could help to foster spiritual renewal, and also again have a deeper purpose and meaning in life, inshallah. So yeah, I think that's it from me for today. Yeah, and so I would like to end, yeah, with this.
Thank you very much, madam. So now we open for Q&A session, so that all participants, if you have a question, you can direct asking here. You can raise up your hand, so it can help me to unmute you guys. Let me check, doctor. I want. I'm checking in the what I call chatting box.
Most welcome. Do you have any questions? Sorry, training for self-care. So yeah, the steps that I have mentioned just now, right? The steps that I mentioned about self-care. So that will be incorporating again, making yourself known of what are your how do we how to say, sometimes we overstep our boundaries, and we need to be able to practice self-care so that we won't be affected, right? Okay. Okay, Aisha, Dr. Yeah, Aisha, how does one handle grief due to a sudden death? Okay, thank you so much for that question, Doctor. So, okay, again, grief is natural response, right? It's a natural response to, I would say, quote unquote, right, abnormal situation, because it's a very delicate issue. So we tend to be affected, yeah, in different aspects, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and all that, right? And I think the first step that we need to do again is to actually acknowledge that loss. I know this sounds very, very cliche, right? Acknowledge that loss, feel those emotions, right? Feel those emotions, let it sit with you. But then again, if there is, because different people would have a different perception of death, and different people would have a different, how to say, um, different reaction, right? So if we lose someone, so being able to sit with that feeling of loss, I think that's very important. Acknowledge that we are affected, okay? And then talk to someone. Again, I know this sounds very, very normal. Yeah, to hear people say that, you need to not isolate yourself. But that's actually the foundation, yeah, of how to, how to actually, how not to get out of that, but to move. I don't use the word move on, I use the word move forward. Okay, that's the very simple steps that we could take. Okay, talk to someone that you can trust. Okay, tell them how you're feeling at that moment. It doesn't necessarily have to, you don't have to tell everything. It's up to you what you want to share. Okay, but most importantly, have that space, that safe space, for you to be able to talk about it. I think that's the very first step. But then if becomes, if the grief becomes unbearable, yeah, and we call it in psychology, we call it complicated grief, right? So it becomes complicated in a sense that we no longer able to function. So if that comes to that point, then it's very important to seek professional help. Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Doctor. All right. If any close ones are suffering, I find it could be severe problem for me. I feel very invested in them. Thank you so much for that question. That is very important because again, yeah, when we love someone very much or deeply, we tend to, we call this over identifying people's with people's problems, right? Okay, so like I said earlier on, we are not their savior. Okay, we are not their savior. So that's very important to let that word sink in because the only savior is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So we are not people's savior. So we're not able to cater to actually take that problem. If like if you can figuratively or like mentalize, okay, it's a ball, the problem is, you can take that ball from other person or that grief from other person. Actually, you're not able to do that because that is their thoughts, those are their feelings, and whatever that they're going through, it's theirs, it's not ours. Our job is to actually be present. So be present here means you don't have to constantly ask them, how you're doing, how you're feeling, you know, um, please be, like sabar or anything like that. You can say that, but sometimes it is not really helpful because I think when it sounds so, I say the value of the words that we say, like, you need to be sabar, this is Allah's test. Sometimes it becomes so, it sounds, for me, this is personal opinion. Sometimes it feels condescending a little bit when we say that, right? Because that's why we need to be able to choose the right words when we talk to people. Because again, if we over identify, we're not able to help them because we ourselves are affected. So if we are affected, we are not able to be useful or beneficial, right, to the person that we are helping with. So realize that their problem is not ours. That's the first thing, right? And acknowledge that we also have limitations. So therefore, if I cannot help her or if I cannot help this person, I will find someone that can help. I think that is how would I separate myself from, taking in people's problems or issues. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.